So, hello everybody. My name is Long Lee, and I am a registered dietitian and a lecturer in dietetics at the University of Surrey. Welcome to the new chat of at Surrey Dietetics Let's Into Live Chat series. And in this new chat, I will be chatting with my guests about their experiences in the food industry and charity sector. I'm very glad I've got two amazing guests this evening, and Declan Henderson and Martin Lau. And let me just quickly introduce them, but I'm very glad and can't wait to introduce them to you. So the first one is Declan. So you probably don't know yet, but Declan is actually a graduate of the University of Surrey. So he graduated in 2018 and has since worked in the food industry at Appetito and Wisher Farm Foods. And Declan's career to date has centered around the development of specialist nutrition products designed for old adults, both living in their own homes as well as care homes and acute hospitals. And to date, Declan has launched over 50 products and has received both the Food and Drink Federation and the British Frozen Food Federation 2022 Rising Star Awards. Congratulations, Declan.
Thank you.
And obviously, the first time I met Declan was last year. And so Declan actually came to the University of Surrey and delivered a dysphagia awareness training session to my Year 2 students, and together with Wisher Farm Foods. And obviously, we had a similar session this year, and Declan didn't come. And obviously, I took everything personally and thought, why Declan didn't come this year? And yeah, literally, I thought it must be like he either hated me or the university. No, I'm joking. And then I've learned Declan actually he had moved to Canada to take up on a new post at Appetito Canada, based in Ottawa. So Declan is actually live chatting with us from Canada. So I'm very glad to have you, although I think you probably, in the past I'd say are you in the afternoon or in the morning? What's the kind of time?
It's 2 p.m. in Canada.
That's very good. Thank you so much for joining me. And then on my right, I don't know which side is that on your screen, is Martin Lau. So let me introduce Martin. So I've seen Martin like everywhere for quite a few years. Even when I was a student, I saw Martin on social media, and obviously Martin was interviewed by some magazines as well. So I've read his story. But it's very nice to actually meet Martin and have this chat. So Martin is the services development manager at Arthritis Action. He was a senior dietitian in the NHS for 5 years prior to joining Arthritis Action. He is one of a few dietitians in the UK who specialises in rheumatology, focusing on sarcopenia, eating patterns, weight and persistent pain management. As well as being a dietitian, Martin is also qualified in the field of strength and conditioning and running Arthritis Action's online strength training class. And currently he's also serving as a member of the European League Against Rheumatism Task Force in the non-pharmacological management of systemic lupus erythematosus. I can't pronounce that word. I've tried so many times.
SLE. Just say SLE. Sometimes you're wondering why all these medical conditions have got such a tricky name.
I have to say, everybody, it's not because I'm professional. I've practiced so many times for the chat. I still it's just a hard word to pronounce. But thank you so much.
It is.
And welcome to the chat. And I can see we've got many of our students and also students from other universities joined us as well. So welcome everybody. And I hope in the next 50 minutes we'll have a great time. And feel free to type your questions in the comments, and hopefully we will address all your questions all the way through. But hopefully we'll have another 5 to 10 minutes at the end to answer any of your questions. So welcome the guests, welcome all those delegates as well. Right, so
thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys. I can't enough to say thank you enough. So first question I guess is obviously I've introduced you guys your bio basically, but can you tell me a bit more about your career, your current career, and for example, if you can tell me one of your typical days, that would be great. And shall we start with you, Martin?
Okay, my day is anything but typical. So but it does consist of remote dietetic consultations via phone or Zoom, facilitating an online strength training class for our charity members. So we had it today, hosting webinars or giving presentations to general public or patient groups.
Wow, so it sounds like quite a lot of different kind of stuff. And
yes,
I'm just thinking, like, in terms of the consultation, do you have like guests? Do you have clients? How does it work? Or do people just sign up on the website or?
Yeah, we are a membership charity. So all the members will have access to me. So if they have any questions, query, or even wanted to have a nutritional assessment, then yeah.
Okay. And how long normally is the consultation then?
It's an hour. It's an hour, and then follow up usually so like 30 to 45 minutes. So everything that we do, we provide as an outpatient. The model applies to
great.
what
So
I'm doing
much
now.
more generous than the NHS in terms of appointment time, and I guess that's probably needed for if you want to really know a patient very well. You do need that sort of time, don't you? And so that's great to know. It sounds like different things every day. What about you, Declan?
So my days are extremely varied, which is something I hold quite dear. I typically work hybrid at the moment, 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, and I'm in a commercial kind of product development role at the moment, research and development, that kind of thing. So my day could be anything from new product tasting, sales and marketing meetings, going to visit our customers to conduct market research. So this could be someone like a hospital, and we might be there to assess their menu or their food service challenges, creating and delivering training on nutrition, collaborating with the marketing team on brochures, marketing collateral, writing new product development briefs for new concepts, planning launches, attending trade shows. It's quite a varied job, and no 2 days are the same, which is something I really enjoy.
That's good. And I also want to ask, obviously you worked at Appetito UK, and now you worked at Appetito Canada. Yeah. So it's actually the same company, but different country. Any difference like between working in the UK and working in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Canada is definitely different. I think there's a little bit more. I mean, my job here is a bit different. There's a little bit more emphasis on work-life balance in Canada, from my observation. It's a much smaller business that I work in here, so I get to wear more hats, as they say. Do a bit more variety in my job role, which is exciting. And the commute is more interesting with snow.
What's the temperature today?
It's about 10 degrees today, so we're starting to warm up. When I arrived, it was minus 38 one of the weekends, which was fun.
Oh my God. Although I have to say, like Guildford or London or the UK has been quite cold this year. And obviously only moved to Canada in February, so you probably had experienced that coldness here this year. But that's good to know. So one of the difference is the more emphasis on the work-life balance. And any other things like key difference you've noticed?
It's difficult because I've only worked in Appetito both sides of the pond, so not too much. What I have noticed in Canada as a general rule is there's a lot more RDs, a lot more registered dietitians working in the industry.
Oh, that's interesting.
A lot of the healthcare sales reps, the oral nutrition supplement people that are in those businesses are RDs, which I think is great for the industry as a whole. So that seems to be more prevalent here than in the UK, which is positive, I think.
Well, that's really interesting to know. That's more. I guess I've noticed the trend myself, like in the past few years. I feel like more graduates have started to work in the non-NHS setting. Compared to before when I was studying dietetics, almost 100% of my cohort ended up working in the NHS. So I think time has definitely changed. And obviously, Martin, and you worked in the NHS for quite a few years, and 5 years, I think, before you moved to arthritis action. And why did you make that change, basically, at that time? Why did you make that decision?
Okay, yeah, but it's a little bit silly actually, because I mean, don't get me wrong, I love working for the NHS. I love the hospital that I was working for, but commuting or driving two and a half hours every day for 5 years, eventually, it just got a little bit too much. Besides, I was friends with one of the rheumatologists in the hospital, and then he kept, feeding me ideas about, working sort of like, privately and so forth. And I just thought, okay, maybe that might be somewhere that, I should consider. And then, just completely by chance, I saw an ad in Dietetics Today. And they were, the ad basically was looking, it's a national arthritis charity looking for a dietitian. And, that was 11 years ago. So I have been with the charity for 11 years now.
That's good.
And,
I guess if you
it.
can stay in a workplace for 11 years, you definitely enjoyed it. And actually, I'm just trying to count the years back to when you started working for the charity. And because what I want to ask was, obviously you were a senior dietitian, and did you have a agenda for change at that time? Was it band 5, 6?
Yes. Yep. I was band 5 when I first got into the NHS, and then band 6. That was where I was. I was the specialist stroke and gastro dietitian.
Then moved to charity, and I think one of the questions I want to know, and I think many of us probably want to know, is the pay okay in charity compared to the NHS? And obviously, you were a band 6 at the time, and so overall, do you think it's comparable, or it's better, or what would you say?
Right. I think I can't really say for other charities. But I can say that Arthritis Action looked after me really, really well. I do get, a performance bonus on a yearly basis, and also private healthcare as well. So
Sounds
I can't
very
complain.
Good. And I would love to have performance bonus, and thinking how well I've done, in my own opinion. But I guess the university and the NHS will just get monthly pay all the same. There's really no bonus.
But being a lecturer is pretty well paid,
considering
right?
the amount of hours I work, I'd probably say I probably get paid less than my band 5.
That's true.
But anyway, I can't complain. I've got a job, so that's good. And Declan, and obviously then you were very different, because you went straight into the food industry after graduation. And why did you make that choice? Unlike many of your fellow graduates at that time, many of them probably joined the NHS, but you went straight. Why did you make that decision? Was it hard?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like all dietitians, I've always had a massive passion for food. And I found that although the NHS is rightly, patient-centred, I found that clinical dietetics was not as food-focused as I would have liked it to have been. I have, and still do, find the process of taking a product idea from a concept, a figment of the imagination, to a physical product and launching it extremely exciting, very cool. And I wanted that to be my career. I always used to go in the supermarket and think, like, how did that idea happen and then become like something you can touch and feel and whatnot. So I wanted to find a career where I could blend that innovation process with my dietetic skill set and expertise. I found that the foodie thing and the fact that the NHS can be quite slow to innovate made me want to join an industry where I could do those cool things, make an impact on a wider scale as well. It's quite attractive to me. It was a very tough decision for several reasons. I mean, firstly, you spend 4 years preparing to be a clinician. You study to be a clinician. I often, when I was in my final year, thought, is this a bit rogue to try and go straight into industry? Is this a bit wild? And my mindset was that if I'm going to try it, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle. Most of the graduate positions at big food companies, the companies who want to be joining at that age, at that time of your career, or whatever, wanted business and marketing degrees. But after well over 100 applications, I did get there in the end. And it was a very tough decision, but I would say it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, as it's allowed me to transfer to Canada and live my North American dream. So that's really cool. And yeah, I guess just for clarity, I joined the Appetito grad scheme 5 years ago. And then since then, more or less yearly, I've tried different things within it: marketing, product management, new product research and development, which has allowed me over time to kind of become a nutrition professional as well as someone that's commercial. So it's been pretty cool.
That sounds actually excellent, and I didn't know they have graduate scheme. And do they still have it now?
Yeah, they have it now. Yeah. What's cool is since I sort of joined, I guess they took a punt on having a dietitian, and then since then they've had another 3 or 4. I've hired one myself. I've hired a couple actually, and it seems to be. I don't see why any food business wouldn't want to have a dietitian in their ranks.
Yeah.
I think it's like a shift in mentality over the last few years, so it's looking good for grads these days.
And did you need to apply before graduation?
You don't have to. I did, just because I had a massive fear of finishing uni and not having anything lined up. But you can do it. Lots of the grads that I know have worked a couple of years in other places, in the NHS, in businesses, and then just giving it a try, I guess.
It's good to know that you actually knew clearly what you wanted to do. And I guess from what you said is, if a student now is thinking of not working in the NHS, if they think it's definitely the non-NHS setting is for them, just go with it, would you say? Or
if they can, all you've got to do is get your foot in the door and try. If you can get in your foot in the door, see if you like it. If not, you can always go and be a clinician, which you train to be.
And do you think the dietetic expertise and skills have helped you in this role?
I think I would say definitely. One of the reasons for that is when I first joined the industry, I was challenged by, the bosses at work, basically, of, challenged, you're a clinician, you don't have any commercial knowledge. That's my challenge if I want to do well, is I'm going to have to learn. After all, it's a business at the end of the day that you're working in. If you're in industry, sales, marketing, profit, loss, all the rest of it. And it was a steep learning curve. The reason I would say, those skills, the commercial skills, are really important. But in hindsight, I believe that any dietitian that learns the commercial skills turns that challenge into a real strength for their career and their career progression. Because not only are you then proficiently, commercially proficient, but you have a skill set as a dietitian that relatively few people, or maybe even no one in that business, will have, in the form of being an RD. So, and what I think is good about that is it doesn't mean you have to spend hours reading marketing textbooks. With commercial stuff, you can pick it up on the job. If you get your foot in the door and they take a chance on you joining the business, you can learn on the job as long as you're confident enough to ask the right questions and absorb the knowledge like a sponge. If you flip it round, you can't become a dietitian just by joining a business and working on the job. So I'd see it as a glass half full rather than half empty, if that's the right way around.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. So you have the dietetic skills and knowledge, but then on top of that, you developed more skills, whereas, if they want to do dietetics, they have to restart a degree. So I think that's absolutely really, really good. Such a good point.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, obviously it's a graduate scheme, and similar as Martin, is the pay okay, like, compared to the NHS pay, like band 5, band 6, and the
I would suggest that, not speaking on Appetito's behalf, but just in general in the food industry, whether it's, sales, marketing, product development, starting salaries will probably be quite similar to a band 5. My observation is it depends on your level of ambition, effectively, of how much money you want to earn. If you're going to be in the NHS for your career, as a band 7, really, you're going to tap out maybe, like, I think you said, Long, it's about 48k. If you want to work in industry and you're open to working in broad roles, the cap for your salary is obviously going to be much higher than that. So it's probably worth thinking about it from what you want to achieve and then working backwards. But as Martin said, in industry, you have access to bonuses, perks like company cars and all the rest of it. So there's pros and cons.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sounds like financially it's very good. I think either the NHS or the other industries, it sounds like from both of you, it's good. It's quite good. So no worries about that, everybody, if you are considering working in other industries. And so obviously one in the charity sector. If I go to you, Martin, what do you enjoy the most?
Well, what do I enjoy most? Inspiring, supporting, and coaching people with arthritis to live a fuller life, even if the disease itself doesn't have a cure. And that spurs me on every day.
I have to say, that's all right.
Excuse me.
And I have to say, Martin, I've never actually seen another person who specializes in rheumatology. I think you still are the only one I've ever met who specializes in rheumatology. I think with regards to that, how different is it? Or how did you train yourself to be a specialist in rheumatology?
Yeah, I think for me, I started to read a lot, going through some of the, old clinical papers and just really looking at, is there a relationship between diet and arthritis? I mean, there's been plenty. I mean, some of the, old papers, even as old as I am, but I'm not going to tell you how old I am, by the way. There are a lot of different sort of revenues that I seek out, and also, going back into some of the textbooks and just learning in terms of, is there a relationship? How is that going to affect people with any sort of like rheumatic conditions? And then so slowly looking at some of the newer areas, because, when we look at rheumatology, diet really is not part of the MDT. Even now, it's slowly being recognized that as part of the rheumatology team, a dietitian is needed. And that is only sort of like, emerged sort of, 2-3 years ago. So overall, it has been surrounded by a lot of hearsay. There are some books out there, really, promoting, cutting out certain foods, you'll be fine. But in fact, the relationship is extremely complex. So, for me, I read a lot, go to conference, chat to, different rheumatologists and also the specialist nurses. And then slowly sort of like, build my knowledge up. And that's, how
so
I
it
do
worked
that.
really, really hard. But I guess because it's such a niche sort of speciality, and I think not many people are in that specialty, which means if people want to know about rheumatology or diet rheumatology, you are the go-to person. So I think that you basically have grabbed such an opportunity there, basically. So that's really good. And if I move to you, Declan, and obviously you said you really enjoyed the developing new food and launching new food, and anything else you enjoy in this food industry? And because obviously you have launched over 50 products, which ones are the proudest you've launched?
Well, I guess, I mean, first, it's always great to be surrounded by food. You know, tasting food each day is, you know, get paid to eat is pretty cool. But you know, I love anyone who's passionate about the food industry or food in general. And, you know, from my experience, all the way from hospital food service to product development in the industry is full of people who take pride in what they do and have a flair for innovation, flair for thinking differently. And that's awesome. And in addition to that, really, you know, the food and drink industry is vital to the UK, which was shown during COVID, you know, when everyone in the food industry was classed as essential workers alongside all the fantastic clinicians in the NHS. So that's something I, you know, think is fun theme throughout the industry. And then, you know, favourite launches, I guess my career really is centred around texture modified food mostly. So I researched, developed and launched some first to market IDSI level 5 and IDSI level 6 desserts. No one was doing them before we launched them, which was cool. Personal favourites is a sticky toffee pudding, classic. Managed to make the sticky toffee pudding over 400 calories, which is pretty awesome for those living with dysphagia that are malnutrition. So that was a real success, and they've been out for about a year. So it's pretty cool when no one's offering that, to launch something new and help patients in hospitals that, so they don't always have to have a pureed dessert as their default option. They can now have the right texture for them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Because sorry, butting in, because I used to work as a stroke dietitian, and trying to find, you know, a great, you know, well, the right texture and also, you know, good in calories. It's almost sort of like you have to mix in that, and you have to do this, and you try to make the, you know, the texture right.
No, the level 5 one's a real calorie bomb, but I'm jealous I'm not as much as a specialist as you are, Martin, in your field. So.
No. I think just you mentioned that, Declan. Would you ever, to say, if you could choose again, would you choose to go to the clinical route rather than the industry route, or would you choose the same?
It's a good question. I mean, at the risk of sounding cringe, I'm quite a big fan of like not regretting stuff. So, you know, I'm pretty happy with where I am and living in a different country. And as I said, I've got to do fun stuff and in my career so far and won some awards. So I don't want to tempt fate and say I'd trade it in. But at the same time, if I was someone else, if I was a dietetics graduate, getting a few years in the NHS under your belt is never going to hurt you before going into industry. You know, at the end of the day, me, I'm N=1, and I've enjoyed it, and I've probably an element of luck, right place, right time, foot in the door, all that sort of thing. So you can always, what I would say is you can always go to NHS and then move to the industry. I would suggest it's probably challenging to go to the industry then go back to clinical. So it depends how risk adverse you are as a person and as a graduate, and if you really know what you want.
Although having said that, I have met dietitians who changed from the industry back to the NHS. So I think it's always an option. I think either way. So I think again, if you are thinking about your future career, I think just to go with what you would like to do now. And I think sometimes, I don't know, like I think sometimes we think too much. And I think that's a good thing, but not necessarily all the time. I think sometimes you just need to follow your gut feelings, really.
I agree with that. I would say the key thing I've learned is if it's industry, if it's NHS, never say no to any opportunity. Just go for it and then see what happens. It's just not the end of the world if you don't like it.
Yeah.
And if you do like it, then everything's grand.
Absolutely, because all the decisions I've made, the key decisions, were random.
Yeah.
So I didn't really. I applied for a job in London, and just 30 minutes before the job advert closed, and then I applied for the job in Surrey. I couldn't say it's random because I know people are watching, and but I always wanted to be a lecturer, and it just came up. I just applied for it without thinking too much because I was in London. That was a relocation basically. But enough about me. Although I love to make everything about me. And if I move back to you, Martin, and what challenges do you think you face in the charity sector? And obviously, I'm very interested because you've worked in the NHS before, and what's the difference between the two as well?
Okay, the challenges, I mean, it used to be when I first joined the charity was under their old name, which is Arthritic Association, and it was founded by somebody who has got, he doesn't have a background in nutrition, put it this way. But he has set up quite a lot of, dietary regimes, and that sort of like was the backbone of the charity. So when I joined, and obviously, the CEO at the time, well, the CEO that hired me, wanted a little bit more sort of complete nutrition rather than sort of like cutting out food. I mean, some of his doctrine was like cutting out a complete food group, and then, cutting out sort of like all the, nightshade vegetables and then you've got to make up with the nutrient losses by, supplementing with vitamin and mineral supplements. So, yeah, so there's a lot of, I call it, quackery going on. I mean, the first year and a half, because I was in the process of, quote, quote, cleaning this up, I didn't want to call myself a dietitian because I would hate to be standing in front of the HCPC disciplinary panel with some of the stuff that they came up with. But anyway, there were a lot of challenges in terms of, having to, have loads of battles with the trustees at the time because they're like absolutely at odds with science. I mean, I even thought that, after every trustees meeting, that would be my last. But luckily, there was a new CEO. He was the ex-CEO of one of the hospital trusts, so he's fully support where I would like the charity to go. And then we went through this rebranding, and then we just moved everything into evidence-based. So if I look back, that was one of the biggest challenge, really. Now, any sort of differences? Well, I mean, I do miss acute dietetics. Running around, ward to wards, outpatient clinics, multidisciplinary meetings and covering ICU. So those are the things I do miss. But with Arthritis Action, I also, obtained some unique experiences. Even though, my, dietetic consultation is more like outpatient clinics, but I am able to add strength and conditioning to help people living with arthritis. So I'm more, I call myself a hybrid
would
practitioner.
Need some of your advice as well, and for strength and conditioning. But but that sounds amazing. And I think when there's a challenge, there's always opportunity as well. And I think that's the amazing thing. That sometimes people just see them as challenges, but I think essentially you were just developing a new service, and I think you could actually see how you'd like to shape that service, and I think that's a really amazing bit of doing this job. And if I move to you, Declan, what do you think your challenge that you faced, unique challenge in the food industry?
I guess I can do one, which is like my personal challenge, and then one which is like a challenge to the The personal one I've already sort of touched on, but it's joining a business as a clinician, and everyone around you, for the most part, has commercial understanding. And the biggest challenge was trying to bring my business understanding up to a minimum threshold, and then beyond that to become, commercially astute and use, I guess I kind of consider myself like not necessarily a hybrid practitioner, but something along those lines of like half a dietitian, half a business marketing kind of person, which I think is cool. So it was learning those business orientated skills was challenging, it took time, but as long as I understood that was my weakness at the time and worked towards it, you then become a well-rounded person. And then for the industry, the current challenge, I would suggest serious pressure is food inflation. So that in the UK, probably 10 to 13%. In Canada, it's around 10%. And that's causing some real headaches for hospitals, care homes, older adults in their own homes who are on pensions, triple up pensions. Food becoming more expensive poses all sorts of challenges and it's a wider public health determinant. It's a public health challenge to getting the right nutrition in. It's a barrier for a lot of the population. That tied between that and Brexit, with imports, exports of food items, the war in Ukraine, procurement, supply chain, there's big headaches for food manufacturers. So that could be anything from restaurants to supermarkets to hospitals, food service, all the rest of it. It's challenging to get ingredients, it's challenging to afford ingredients, and that trickles down to the end consumer, whether they're a resident in a care home, you or I going to the supermarket and noticing things go up, or older adults without a proactive source of income. So that's a real challenge. It could be a barrier to people's nutritional intake in the community.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's challenging from your end of producing this product, but also, as you said, the end, because all the ingredients have become more expensive, then obviously we need to sell them more expensive, and then the impact on people can't afford them, and as a result, especially if you work on sort of dysphagia range of foods, and people can't just switch to another cheaper brand. It has to be very more specialized, and that's even more that's harder basically, because they had no choice, do they?
Definitely.
That's really hard.
If you're looking at 45% plus patients in hospitals at risk of malnutrition, they require fortified diets, fortification costs money, and food service budgets in NHS. I'm pretty sure they're not going up in line with inflation or higher. So it's a dilemma, isn't it, for everyone involved?
Definitely. And hopefully the inflation will come down as predicted, but keep my fingers crossed. And because I personally can feel that things are becoming more expensive as well. But anyway, and you did mention as one of your personal challenge of thinking of going into the food industry, and obviously worried about losing that clinical side of knowledge and skills. And then as part of the HCPC, we have to keep up to date with the knowledge and within your scope of practice. So how do you guys keep up to date with research and with the knowledge and developments in dietetics?
It's a good question. So for me personally, there can be, there's a whole host of events, lectures, workshops, CPD opportunities out there to attend. You've got obviously all of your BDA staff for BDA symposiums, there's CPD accredited webinars, there's live events, you can obviously do your own research. But in addition to those sort of like formal teaching classroom type things, working with hospital food service, working with consumer nutrition when it comes to marketing, I do a lot of training for individuals in nutrition. I have to stay up to date, so I'm not teaching rubbish, but secondly, even those activities can be used in your portfolio if you're ever called up to be reviewed, and writing reflections, those sorts of things all count towards your continued professional development. So that's my view. I don't know if you have any
definitely. What about your marketing?
I'm lucky enough to have a couple of hours of protected CPD time. My go-tos are the Dietetics Today, Complete Nutrition, Network Health Digest, and also my nutrition web.
My
They do some
great.
really
Yeah,
good
yeah.
webinars.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if I have a few moments, I would just sit down and watch some of the webinars. I mean, this is really fantastic resource for dietitians or even, student RDs or RDs to be. So those are the things that I actively seek out learning, but also some of the indirect type of CBD will be you're looking at Twitter. Twitter can be great. It is a great platform for some of the newly published papers, so that could be
Yeah,
quite
definitely. I
useful
love
as well.
Twitter. So I think like sometimes I think Twitter is sort of double sword edge because I think sometimes they summarize it in really short, but because of the very limited
Mm,
characters, sometimes it really really easy to mislead within that context. So
yeah.
I think yeah, Twitter is a place I love as well. And I guess it's quite important to understand within the HCPC, it does say within your scope of practice. And I think that scope of practice sort of helps because when I changed my role into a lecturer role and stopped practicing in the NHS, many people ask, can you keep your dietitian registration because you're not practicing anymore? And I was like, my scope of practice has changed to dietetic education. So as long as I can prove
Mm,
my continuing development in that scope of practice, that's fine. Obviously, you can't know
mm,
everything as a dietitian. It's basically within a defined
yeah.
area. How can you know? And I think then so there's a question in this chat saying, how do you find the time to do CPD and work? Obviously, Martin says that very luckily you've got protected time every week to do that. And I guess like many of the times you have to do it on your own time, I guess.
Mm.
Um,
Yep. Yeah. It's no stranger that every sort of like Saturday or even Sunday, I'll just grab my laptop and just start, reading stuff or just watching webinars. So these, I mean, even though that I say that I've got some protected time, but, a lot of the times I tend to use it, so like use it my
yeah.
own,
And what
use my
about
own
you,
leisure time to
Yeah,
do
Declan?
that.
I think Martin's points bang on. I would suggest the only other thing I would add to that is if you're doing dietetic related things during your working day that are research and development based, or where you have to look up or even use your current
Mm.
expertise, make note of that, and that can be used as evidence. And then wanting to build your knowledge, you may have
Mm.
protected time like Martin has, or you may have to put in a few extra hours, but such is life, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you then collaborate with other healthcare professionals? And I guess, Declan, I don't know if you have other healthcare professionals in your food industry or just other professionals. Um, so obviously in the NHS, they've got OT, physios, and speech and
Yeah.
language. I don't know if you have a similar sort of other
Mm.
MDT in the food industry.
Yeah, so I guess if we're related strictly to healthcare professionals, there's other dietitians internally to my company that I work with, but more importantly, our key customers, our hospitals, our care homes, which obviously feature a whole host of clinicians' input. Mostly, I network with other dietitians and speech and language therapists, both clinical, some catering or food service related, to understand the needs of their patients from a food service perspective. And I translate their goals from a food service perspective into new products and services in my job. And in addition to that, in the sort of consumer space of adults living in their own homes, we conduct a lot of activity in community-based healthcare professional teams to help support those local teams to ensure we're making suitable meals for older adults in their own homes in the UK of today. So it's not internal, but a lot of sort of external dealing and working with healthcare professionals is key to making sure that our products fit for patients, residents, whoever it may be. So there's quite a lot of crossover really. So I have to obviously keep on point with my clinical practice to ensure that I'm still, in the same league and have the same level of conversation.
Definitely. I guess, for example, if you work on the dysphagia, a range of foods, then you will have to know about conditions that will affect swallowing abilities, I guess. And then that's another way you keep up with all those clinical knowledge.
I know a lot about, probably more about dysphagia than quite a lot of band fives, just because of the nature of my work.
Yeah.
Declan, you missed passing the NG tube.
So we've work a lot of IDSI, do a lot of training, work with a lot of speech and language therapists, and work with Peter Lamb, set up IDSI directly. He lives in Canada, and those sorts of things. So it's been quite interesting from that point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And Martin, I assume that arthritis action also employ other HPs, or no?
No, apart from our medical advisor, and also our exercise lead, he's an osteopath, and that's about it. But I do get referrals, from physiotherapists and an osteopath within the charity. So I do tend to work with them a lot, and also, at times where, I also work with podiatrists, and they're amazing people. So, but before the pandemic, I got invited to talk to physios, rheumatology, special nurses, and also specialist trainee doctors about, diet and arthritis. So I do get sort of like a sample of quite a few healthcare professionals. So
it sounds like still like a liaise with other professionals, receive referrals, but then I also sense some opportunities there for other AHPs, and I would assume like physios and OT probably are needed in rheumatology. I don't know much about it. I was just assuming. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But so it sounds like there are other opportunities and collaborations. And right. So, any exciting project you're working on at the moment? I'll start with you, Martin.
Oh. For me, my exciting project is sort of like done and dusted. It's basically, I call it my little baby. It's the arthritis self-management resource. It is a web-based platform containing videos and resources to help patients with arthritis to self-manage. The platform has now been used by a few GP surgeries and also a few rheumatology departments as a resource for patients newly diagnosed with arthritis. So it's not. I kind of wanted it to be interactive, but obviously, money. So it is more sort of like you click on a physical or a mental aspect of managing arthritis. Out comes a little video, and then you watch the short video, and then accompany that there was some PDF file or some websites for people to learn a little bit more about that particular
excellent
topic.
Resources, and I think we have, I believe, have helped many people, and I think that's very, very good. What about you, Declan?
Wow, it's all new for me here in Canada, so some of it's top secret. Nothing that incredible, but I can't give too much away. But working on a new range of soups here in Canada, and also the UK is very advanced when it comes to texture modified food. The great nation of Canada is slightly behind as a sort of country in terms of the texture modified offerings on the market. So there's many providers in the UK, there's many great products. The offering from providers in Canada is a bit more limited, so I'm looking at some stuff in that space. That's all I can say, really, I'm afraid.
Very exciting and good to know that we're doing better here in the
Oh,
UK.
UK is
And
very
very
far ahead.
proud.
Very far ahead in
Excellent. But then that's opportunity for you as well in Canada. So lots to do, and
yes.
I think I always find it very exciting to develop new stuff, whether it's a service or in
Mm.
your case a product. So I think that's good. And then I think the question for both of you is, how do you see the role of dietitians evolving in your industries over the next few years, and what trends or advancements should aspiring dietitians should be aware of?
I guess I touched on it earlier. I have an interesting perspective on this based on my move to Canada. Is that since moving to Canada, there are many dietitians in industry in Canada versus the UK, where it can be quite rare. I would say more often than not, dietitians tend to eventually move into the industry here. I think now the NHS is no longer funded dietetics course, there will be more opportunity during study to consider a future in the industry. And also the BDA, or there is a new BDA specialist group for industry dietitians in the making. And the future for that is bright. It's one of my friends, one of my fellow Surrey graduates who set that up. And my observation is that UK businesses are starting to wake up to the amazing skills dietitians can bring to a business. And my question is, why would any food business not want a nutrition expert in their ranks? It seems crazy to me if they wouldn't. So I think graduates should focus on, selling themselves to businesses with what skills they can bring to the table. There's thousands and thousands of business and marketing graduates and all the rest of it, but not many dietetics. So unique skills to bring to the table.
That's such a good point. And what do you think, Martin?
Oh, definitely. It's quite key to have RD in any sort of food industry, or even registered nutritionist. That's absolutely crucial. So I mean, I always one area this is quite close to my heart is actually sarcopenia. I think Declan is in a unique position to look at new products to help with that as well. But then again, the problem is if I see all this little whey protein drink in front of me, I'm just gonna start drinking it rather than keeping it on the shelf.
Yeah, definitely. I think because everybody needs to eat basically, and I think that just itself creates so many opportunities. And I think, as Declan and Martin said, if you have identified a company or a charity that's probably linked to people's health or eating and drinking, if they don't have a dietitian, probably you can approach them and pitch yourself to them, I guess, and then just sell yourself and then say employ a dietitian, and then you can start from there. I actually think that's the trend as well in the next few years of.
Yeah, and also, if you're looking at sort of like the global burden of diseases they are on the rise. I mean, when we're looking at charities providing help and support to patients living with these diseases, are likely going to be inundated with people asking for help. And many of these diseases do have a lifestyle element, and nutrition plays an integral part. But my advice to aspiring dietitians is really going to be, don't be afraid to go into an area which is not popular in dietetics.
As one of our previous guests has said, if it's niche, that means you are the expert. That means many opportunities.
Yeah, competition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I can't believe the time is nearly there, and I feel like I've got so much more we can chat. And I guess to close this chat, really, my last question before we start to answer people's question is, what are some key takeaways or lessons that you've learned throughout your career that you would like to share with dietitians or student dietitians who are considering a non-NHS career path? Any of you can make a start.
Okay, I'll go. For me, as I'm working for a charity dealing with a medical condition, spending a few years working in the NHS helped. And in order to be a better specialist, you need to be a better generalist.
Yes, absolutely. Personally, I am with you on that, because I do feel like many years of NHS experience has helped me in terms of my lecturing, because I do know quite a lot of clinical stuff. But obviously, then Declan is in a very different position. And what would you say then?
I quite like the phrasing of that, Martin, and I will steal that and apply that to business. So I would say the first thing is never say no to an opportunity. Give it a try, whether it's NHS, industry, charity, whatever it is. If there's an opportunity that presents itself, give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? You'll learn something. You might learn nothing other than you didn't like what you tried, but at least you've learned that. And yes, I guess sharing Martin's point, I think you need to try and gather as much experience in a variety of fields as you can in your junior career, whether that's clinical, whether that's business roles within a food company, nutrition related roles within a food company. As you acquire those skills, broad skills across dietetics, commercial, whatever it may be, that puts you in good stead to progress in the future. You quickly become well-rounded and able to specialize wherever you choose. It's also very, very fun, engaging and satisfying to try your hand at a variety of different things whilst you can during your early careers. You can always try laterally sidestep different things. It's quite difficult to progress down one route and then head back. And trying a variety of things, both commercial and nutrition and dietetics related, is what's led me to my career now and my journey to Canada, which is been cool. And you know what they say, the old variety is the spice of life. It's true, really.
Such, I think, excellent advice, and I 100% agree with you on this. And I think hopefully the people who are watching, mostly students, can learn from you guys as well. I think that's really, really good. So anybody, if you have any questions for Declan and Martin, please send in now. And we're just going to answer a few questions, and then we're going to end this chat. And the first one is, so Jacob from Newcastle University actually asked, he is actually currently working on video resource to help students to eat more healthy and sustainability. Any advice on that, Martin?
Sure. Always remember the attention span for people is really short. So keep your video straight to the point as much as possible. And also, looking at, using, because when you're talking about, healthy eating, it can be quite dry. So make something, fun, from that. So that will be some of the pointers that I would, I would give you.
Add to that, try and use infographics. They can be fun if it's that sort of format. And then if it's to students, general population, use food. Don't use grams and portion sizes. Use food, because that's what people understand.
Absolutely. Really good point, Declan. And also, if you do have a little bit of money to spend on that, try and make it like as an animated video, because if you know your target audience, if they are a little bit younger, they probably will find animation will be a little bit more receptive, rather than see this guy here chatting about food, which can be.
And I was seeing that people nowadays only have 10 seconds to grab their attention, and so definitely I think within that first 10 seconds, how you're going to basically attracts them to carry on watching.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice from both of you. And so one of the students asked you, Martin, because you mentioned a few resources for your CPD. Can you repeat them again?
Sure. Dietetics Today, obviously. Complete Nutrition, which is a magazine. I do believe that as a dietitian or student dietitian, you do get a free subscription, same as with the Network Health Digest. That is, again, a magazine, a smaller magazine designed for dietitian. And finally, it is a website called My Nutrition Web. They do have regular webinar for CPD, which is fantastic
free
resource.
for students, and so that's really, really good. And okay, so thank you so much, guys, for joining this chat. And I've got a question asking if this is recorded. So basically, this chat will go on our Instagram page as a post, but it will also go on our YouTube channel as well. Yes, we've got a YouTube channel now at Surrey Dietetics, and we've got this at Surrey Dietetics Let's Insta Live Chat series YouTube channel. So you can watch this recording there as well. And again, thank you so much for your time, Martin and Declan. And I've learned so much about your experience. I think your experiences are so inspiring as well. And I'm sure you have certainly inspired of many of our students and beyond. And hopefully I will see you guys in person at some time. I visit you in Canada, and Declan, if you welcome me, and hopefully I will see you in person somewhere, Martin, because literally I'm everywhere, so I'm sure I will see you soon.
Cheers, guys.
And have a good evening, everybody, and thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye.